think I was about 10 years old. A kid, I had the only Siberians, I had the first team of Siberians in the United States, short of what Leonhard Seppala was driving and Mrs. Ricker was driving. And one day at school, I had won a 3-dog race, and this kid called my dogs Egyptian critters. Well, I took after it, and I sent him to the hospital with 2 broken thumbs when he hit me twice. I never got a shot at him. I got my first Siberian, a bitch by the name of Mona, in March of 1929. Mona is in the background of a very, very large number of good racing-type Siberians today, particularly in Scandinavia. I also find that out on the West Coast, there are quite a number of pedigrees you can trace right back to this Mona there. Consequently, I feel quite privileged in having owned Mona. As I said, 1929 was the start of my Siberian Husky experience. The Siberian was brought to Alaska as a racing dog. In the area, it was a sled dog that provided a moderately fast mode of transportation over a fairly long period of time. But they were brought onto this continent as a racing dog. So to me, the Siberian is a racing dog, nothing else. Not a show dog, not a lap dog, or anything else. It first has to be a racing dog. Then it can be anything else. I was quite involved, more so than Dr. Lombard was with the old Siberians, simply because my father had loaned Leonhard Seppala some money one year when he came to Laconia. And in order to, Sepp couldn't pay my father back. So in order to square things, we got some dogs from Sepp. I learned how to drive sled dogs one night when Seppala was at the house and I had been sent to bed, and I crept back down the stairs and hid behind the door. And my father was hitting Sepp up for the money, and Sepp told him, well, I can't pay you, but I will give you such and such a dog and such a dog, and also I will give you a number of tips on how to drive sled dogs and how to feed sled dogs. And I can distinctly remember 10 tips that he gave my father that they're my Bible. All my life I drove sled dogs from those 10 tips. I had one team of Siberians that won 54 out of 67 races. There were 2 or 3 times that I possibly got beat because the other fellow had a better dog than me. But the rest of the times that I was beaten was because I had not had adequate training. Either I was too busy or weather conditions in my area were not so. Well, I can remember one year going into the Ottawa race, 38 miles a day for 3 days, and my dogs haven't done more than 13 miles in training. Needless to say, I got beat. I ended up second. My dogs would run out to the 20, 22-mile mark, and I'd have a 6 to an 8-minute lead, and they'd run out of gas. Well, I knew it was going to happen. I told my father it was going to happen. Dad says, well, keep your mouth shut. My dogs were high gear. I didn't have to say anything. They just left the starting line, and they just ran themselves out. I did beat this gentleman the 3rd day, but he had a 13-minute lead on me, so that there wasn't any way that I could have caught him. I owned dogs at some point, like Krevanka and Tserko. Drove them, knew what they were. Drove a lot of the dogs the Seppala had turned over to Harry Wheeler, such as old Bonzo and Smokey and Kinyak. Dogs that Lombard never saw. He might have seen them, but he didn't know who they were. And so I had the opportunity to drive those dogs, and I knew what they were. And when I look around and I see a lot of the Siberians today, it makes me sick. It really does. Because they're not what the Siberian was in, let's say, approximately 1930, 1929. My effort today is to try to resurrect what I had when I was a kid. And you do that by variety, not by refinement. When you try to refine, you lose something. You have to have a variety. And this is what is lacking in the show dogs. There's been too much refinement. You can't do that. You have to have a variety. I also was involved with some of the dogs that were brought over in 1930. There were 10 or 11 dogs that were brought in. All but 3 died by the time I got a chance to look at them. Lona Demidov says, "Oh, Sonny, you were only 10 years old. What do you remember?" I got an elephant's memory. I can see those dogs. I drove those dogs, and I knew what they were. There was one bitch. She was better than Tserko and Krevanka. Her name was Chanasi. But all the other dogs had died of lepto, and I don't know what Chanasi died from, but I know that the next time we went to Poland Springs, Chanasi had died. I have a picture somewhere in this book of Chanasi, and when you look at her, now, a lot of times there's been a controversy on cream-colored dogs with a black saddle. Oh, there's going to be German Shepherd in them. It's just Chanasi was a cream-colored dog with a black saddle, and she came right from Siberia. I think I'll stop right there if there are any questions.
I have one. You didn't give us your 10.
I'm not going to.
You're not going to?
I will tell you some of them. I will tell you some of them, but I won't tell you all of them. You know, I'm still dreaming. When I was in the 4th grade, I wrote a composition. And I was going to do 3 things in my life. I was going to drive sled dogs in Alaska, I was going to be a veterinarian, and I was going to run the Boston Marathon. And that damn wombat, I couldn't get him to run the marathon with me, so I never ran it. No, those 10 things were pretty much my Bible. Now, for instance, one silly thing. In my area, there were a lot of horses. And I was just a 10-year-old kid. And you come to a crossroad where a couple of farmers had met to unload their milk. And they'd stand there talking while their horses dumped. And I'd come to this 4 corners, and I couldn't get my 3 dogs through there until they gobbled up all the horses. Oh, I actually got out there with a whip and tried to, drive them through, and there wasn't any way. Seth says, "I can cure that." He says, "You grind up some carrots, raw carrots, and put it to feed. It works like a miracle. Works like a miracle." You know, you can lose an awful lot of time while the dog's gone off and nothing. Oh, okay.
All we get out of it's 1, huh? All we get out of it is 1, huh?
Well, at the moment.
Come on, stretch it a little.
At the moment.